Seer Show is a live broadcast of truth seekers and believers, empowering the evolution of consciousness. Raphael and Celeste will dive deeper than the mainstream media while answering the mind's deeper questions and transforming conversations. They will have unique guest speakers who will share knowledge, tools, and techniques to create coherence in our mind, body, and spirit.
Good morning, Celeste. How are you?
I'm so excited, Raphael. It's only a few days left.
I know, right? I love that outfit, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I did wear it 2018 for New Year's Eve, and it still fits me. So I wanted to point that out.
That's a good sign.
For more the health, physical health episodes we do and speak about, and the mental health, it still fits me physically and mentally very well.
Oh, nice. I have my llama. You can see I have my llama sweater.
It's adorable.
Right? I also teach Tibetan llama pie, which is a Chinese martial art. So
we should do an episode on that.
Yes. So why don't you do us all a favor, and you got to meet our next guest, and you have 1,000 questions for him, like we all do. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your thoughts on Stuart, please?
Well, you know what? Reading through Stuart's content made me realize and remind myself how beautiful it is to just calm the mind, if it's through meditation, if it's through hypnotism, reset and get the right mindset. If it's just for the day, if it's just for the next, business campaign or for bigger projects life, but take step by step, reset your mind and start fresh. And often it's really good to have guidance through that. And that's what I find very interesting about Stuart.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and bring him on. So, and then when we bring Stuart on, don't hit him with a fire hose. Let's use a garden hose so that we don't drown him, okay? I know you're very excited, and actually so am I, because one of the most important things that I think that we overlook is what our mind can actually do. When we put, and the saying goes, when you put your mind to it, you can do anything, right? So let's go ahead and bring Stuart on.
Hey
Hello,
there.
Stuart. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Raphael and Celeste. It's wonderful to join you and your audience. I mean, it's an honor for me.
Honor for both of us. Thank you.
And also, it's one of the last episodes of 2022. So I think the timing is really good, Stuart, in just reminding people it's 2023, set out your goals, rethink your mind pattern, get rid of those old habits and the same routine, and adopt a new mindset. And that's what you do, isn't it, with your clients?
Yeah, I help them get out of their way, because I think that a lot of the time people don't realize that their mindset is actually holding them back. It's something that they've practiced their whole life, and they think that's just the way it is. And unfortunately, a lot of the time it's like a mental prison. We get locked into this way of thinking, and we don't see a possibility of change. And one of the biggest ways is negative self-talk. I'm sure you've all heard of it. I'm not good enough at this. I can't do this, that, and everything else. And we can change it by just having a listen to the conversations we're having with ourselves. For instance, I mean, did you ever know of anybody or meet anybody who has a young child, very young child, about 11 months old, that thinks it can't walk?
Oh, yeah.
They never think that. They always know that they can walk. They just have to find the way. And they do. But when we get to be adults, we forget that. And we think, oh, no, I can't do that. And if we just add a little word onto the end of that sentence and say, yet.
Love that word.
I can't do that yet, but I can learn because I've learned before. But we forget all the resources and all the things we have learned. So sometimes it takes someone external to us to just say, hey, just take a moment and think about how you're talking to yourself, and just hear those conversations. And when you notice them, Don't get cross with yourself. Don't call yourself stupid. Just say, hey, great, wonderful. Now it's my opportunity
Another
to
lesson
grow.
learned.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah, but a lot of us, we make mistakes. I mean, and for instance, I'll give you a beautiful example of how I managed to catch myself when I was taking my two young children. I've got two young girls, one's 4 and the other's 5.5. And I was taking them to kindergarten one morning, and just outside the entrance to where we live, there's a little ornamental pond. And I keep telling them all the time to keep away, don't go too close to the water. But children are like magnets, to water. It's like iron filings to a magnet. And this morning, I managed to step backwards into the pond and fell in backwards.
Oh my gosh.
And as I was going in, I just said, look at Daddy, he's being silly, and splash.
Well, you know, he just loves the whole world, so.
Yeah, and then they just looked at me and they started laughing because I hadn't got angry. I got out, I was dripping from head to foot, and I took them to kindergarten. I came back, and I was happy, they were happy, but they had a beautiful lesson in reality without me losing it, because I managed to notice and just accept. And that's what we can do if we just become a little bit more aware. Now, I could have easily have got angry with myself and shouted and done all sorts of nonsense things, and that would have been a totally different lesson.
You know, if you would have gone that way, your daughters might have said, who is that guy? What if you started cursing and blaming and blaming and blaming?
Yep.
They would have said, we don't like that guy, right?
No, that's it, isn't it? Because they
you
know
showed up.
Daddy is silly.
You showed up, and you said, "Let's have some fun with it. Let's look how silly Daddy is."
Yeah. And
so many people.
The thing is, we can't change it, can we?
No.
It happens.
Yeah.
So let's accept it and just get on with it and make something of it.
Mm-hmm. Without a doubt. You know, when we think about the fact that we get in our own way, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we don't live in the moment. We take every moment and we change it because we think it should be this way or that way. But in reality, we got to learn, like you did, to say, you know what? I'm soaking wet. I still have to take my kids to kindergarten. And if I show up as this person who's going to be all mad and angry and screaming and blaming, what am I doing for them? Right? So you showed up in the best possible way and you made, like they say, lemon aid, right?
Yep.
Notice that it says lemon, right? But then it's the aid part, right? Lemonade.
That's the thing.
You aided the situation by being a better person.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to the fact that there's a word called acceptance. Awareness and acceptance are two very close words in mindfulness. And first you become aware of what's happening and then just accept that it's happening. Because that gives you power. It gives you the power of choice rather than reacting from emotion. And those are three, I think, really, they should be taught at a school level. AAC, forget ABC. We should learn AAC because it's something that we're not taught. Most people are just in reaction all the time, in reaction, and that's generally a negative thing. But if we have that moment to just say, okay, it's happening. Let me just accept it's happening, and then I can choose how I want to react to it. That's very, very empowering for people.
So when people, what do you think happens to someone when they react? Do they lose their true self and someone else kind of steps into their role, right? Isn't that what happens to someone when you see somebody lose it because a situation happened, right? All of a sudden they're like, wow,
I don't know whether
who
you're
are
losing
you?
your true self. I think you're just giving your responsibility to your emotion. Because we all have that potential. Right. And I think we're all one person, we're all an individual people, and we all have that power to choose which way we want to show up. But most of us don't see that as a choice. Road rage is a very good example. It happens so quickly. And what happens in road rage, we go into the whole negative side of things. And is that helping us? No, but what we don't realize is that that's also a choice. So by accepting, then we can choose, okay, I want to be that wiser person, or I want to be this disempowered person who's just ranting and raving, because it's part of us.
And we also operate either out of love and out of fear. And fear is often not really explained enough, because fear is again something that holds you back. And with a lot of your clients, you talk a lot about career change and empowering yourself for a new chapter. And for that, it's almost, you can't operate out of fear. You can't operate out of survival mode. You've got to really let go of that sensory overload and reset your mind to operate out of love and excitement, as an example. And as you just said, if you lose it, you've just learned another lesson. And it's either love or fear. How are you going to react? You had a very fast reaction when you fell into the pond. That was a very fast thinking, Stuart.
I don't even know if I was thinking.
It's a natural positive. So you've done very well over the last few years.
But, fear is a very important driver for us. Obviously, if we go back into the caveman days and everything else, fear was very important. But even today, you get a lot of actors, you get a lot of musicians, you get a lot of performers who, before they go into do a live performance, the fear hits them like a ton of bricks. But they channel that energy. They understand it, and they channel the energy into the performance. So we can use it as a driver to energize us. But for most people, they don't have that connection at the moment to the understanding, and they let the fear run rampant, and that becomes too much. And obviously, if that keeps happening, then you get stress, you get all sorts of health issues that can come from there. But once you become aware and you just accept, okay, it's happening.
It's living in
and
the
give
moment,
me
right?
the power. Yeah.
So where does that journey come from? The coaching system that you have, the mindful hypnotic coaching system, where you allow people to relax their mind so much that you can guide them through a new point of view, a new attitude, to get away from the hardwired attitudes. Could we go into that, please?
Yeah, it's an interesting journey. And when I was born in the UK, and I don't live in the UK, I live in the south of China at the moment. But when I was living in the UK, I had a deep interest of traveling through Africa. And in '86, I went overland from Johannesburg, South Africa, back to the UK. Now, when I got back to the UK 6 months later, I suddenly decided I don't want to be there. So 3 months after that, I was back in South Africa, and I lived there for 18 years. And there's a lot of incidents happened, some wonderful things, some not so good. But then, things started falling apart. Like, I was offered an opportunity to teach English as a second language in China. And the only question I had was, if it's the north, it's too cold. So, is it in the south or the north? And they said, no, it's not far from Vietnam. And that was in 2003. I came here, and through teaching English as a second language and through the interactions with the students and finding out that I was one of the most popular teachers, I had the best class retention rates, etc., etc. I went, why is this? What am I doing? And I studied NLP with John Grinder, and I studied conversational hypnotherapy, Ericksonian conversational hypnotherapy, and a few other disciplines. And somewhere along the way, I said, okay, now I know what I'm doing. And then the last school I worked at, the students were not youngsters anymore. They were more adults, young adults, 26, 28, 30, 35. And because they had a higher level of English and were getting ready to move abroad, they had challenges that they wanted to resolve. And the classes became coaching lessons. And when they started making these changes and had that smile from the heart that told me that they get it now they understand, then that was the natural progression. But it's been a whole lot of stuff. The journey through Africa, the incidences that happened there, having lions sniff the tent at nighttime, having been sniffed head to foot by a wild elephant, and all the other things that have happened there were all part of my education, if you like, that life decided I needed before I was ready to become who I am now.
So I understand that we all go through different learning curves depending on the age, right? Children learn so different than adults. And even young adults learn differently than somebody who's a little bit more mature, say 40, 50. And we can, because it's all perspective, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, and you don't always realize the lessons you're having at a young age. They're actually beneficial to you. For instance, when I was a teenager, I was one of the most shy people in the world. And I didn't realize that that was training me to be a good observer. I was just going to parties and looking and saying, please come and talk to me. Please come and talk to me. But nobody would. And I couldn't talk to anybody else. But I could see and I could understand how they were reacting. And it was only later in life I thought that that is actually a benefit. And it's something I'd like to just pass on to people, that if you are shy, perhaps you're learning something a lot more deep than you realize.
Observation.
Yeah.
With
Celeste and I are both people watchers, so we definitely we definitely into the observation part.
With headphones too, I sit and I listen to classical music or like Frank Sinatra, and you observe the people around you, you know, because if you have the music on, there's less sensory overload, so it allows you to calm the mind and really be present to observe. Stuart, you mentioned before that you work with the younger generations and the teenagers. How would the world look like if let's just say here, especially in Australia, in America, in the Western world, would teach mindset, meditation, hypnosis, you know, life coaching, all these things that you do? What changes would we see if 2023 we start sharing this more with the younger generation?
I think that we would become, firstly, more accepting of each other. Because we've got so much division that's been created in the world. We don't accept this person because of this, because of that, you know, whether it's their way of thinking, whether it's their way of dressing or whatever. There's always a division created. So I think if we had that taught at a young enough age, people would start saying, okay, we're all people. We're no different from each other, you know. That's one of the biggest lessons, that in the poorest parts of Africa, the people have got nothing, but they're the happiest people in the world. And they're so welcoming to you. But you go into a city like New York or London and that, people don't want to know you. They hate you. They look at you as though there's something wrong with you. Where we lost the plot somewhere along the way. So I think that's one of the biggest things. And if we've got that understanding, that openness of people as people, and that we are all connected, then it's going to make such a big difference to the whole energy of the world.
Beautiful.
It starts at home, doesn't it, Stuart?
It does. But, you know, I think a lot of people, they don't even accept themselves. So if they can't accept themselves, how can they accept anyone else?
Yeah, you know, a lot of people are not raising their own children, especially with the finances nowadays. There's two households, if you think of it. One where in the old days it was one person went to work and one person stayed home. Now both people are going to work. Someone else is raising their children, and if they're in a daycare, they're not taking care of the mental aspects of things. They're just like, all right, let's get these kids, you know, let's go make sure they get fed, make sure they're taken care of. But then there's none of that, you know, synergistic way of saying, let's empower them. So a lot of kids are growing up now not really with the love that they need from home, because they're not literally they're not growing up at home.
Not enough.
And I think they're also getting this hidden message that they're not wanted, that they're a nuisance, that they're a problem. And that's something which is affecting the psyche later on as well. Because if you've got two parents who are too busy running around trying to fill jobs, and they see the children as a nuisance, they haven't got that time for them, and they're rushing off to drop them off somewhere, they're not spending any quality time. And it's known that children will take on the responsibility for the problems in a relationship. And sometimes they say to themselves mistakenly that if I die, then my parents will be okay. They'll be together because I'm the cause of it. So we have all these hidden messages that are being programmed, and it's so true what you're saying. It's a big shame, and that was one of the reasons I decided when my first came along, 5.5 years ago, that I'm going to be there as much as I can for her, and then her sister came 18 months later. Because I don't want that to be the situation. So they basically are. I mean, children are children, aren't they? they test you, but they are the priority in my life, and I have to work around them because to me that's very, very important.
I just by chance, because we're talking about it, I had this book lying next to me. It was plan to show it, but it's perfectly on the point. My mom gave me this book for Christmas, so 2 days ago, and it literally says how to talk when the kids won't listen. And it is a beautiful book about how to slow your own mind down and your conversations, your vibrational words. What's the intentions of your words? What kind of conversation are you having? And so that's very, very, very important, as you said, and it should be at younger age. And Raphael, you just mentioned, so young, they go to kindergarten and all of that. That's 0 to 7. That's where they're purely a sponge of energy and mind mirror, echoing the vibrational state of their parents in the family home or their aunties in the, the environment. You talk a lot in your content about the Garden of Eden and to finally live your dream. And that's sort of, that those are seeds we should be planting into the younger generation.
Yeah, I mean, the children are already in their dream. They're already in that Garden of Eden, their little world. But unfortunately, society takes them out of it. And quite often we don't have that understanding of where they are. We say to them, don't be silly, you can't see that. I mean, children have got these imaginary playmates. They can talk, they can have conversations with anything or anybody. And it's like my young daughter. Sorry?
I still do that.
Well, that's wonderful that you can do that. I mean, because most people
No wonder, Celeste. No wonder so many times I call her, she goes, wait a minute, I'm having a conversation with someone.
I need good advice for a second. Hold on.
Yeah, but that's where we need to be. But we're told it's silly. It's like my daughter, the eldest daughter yesterday found a dead bird, and she was carrying it around and talking to it and everything, and it was just wonderful that she had that connection. Well, most people would have been just, it's a dead bird, get rid of it.
Right.
No, let her be, because she's in that world, she's connected, and let her enjoy it and see how I can then keep it and grow it, as well as to help her to accept the messages she's getting from our external sources, maybe kindergarten, maybe the schooling system as she gets older, that are trying to clamp down and tell her she can't do that. Let her keep it. It's so beautiful to be able to see that. And I was lucky that I had my children at an older age than many people. So I've had that time to absorb this knowledge and all the lessons. I mean, I can't put it into words how some of the lessons affect you. I mean, for instance, once when I was in Zimbabwe, I was just going to start a barbecue on the banks of the Zambezi River near Victoria Falls. And I just looked into this tree that was about 5-10 feet away, and there's an elephant stood there watching me.
Wow.
And my first thought was, if I light the fire now, the smoke's going to be irritating to it, and it's not polite. So I just stood there, and I just had a conversation with the elephant. Neither of us were scared. Neither of us was a threat to the other. Neither of us was out of place. We both belonged there. And there were some more animals, and later some warthogs came along and brushed my leg as they went down to the river to get their sundown in the evening. And then eventually, about 5 minutes later, it was getting darker. The elephant just turned and disappeared, and that was it. He was gone. But we had this conversation. Now, I want to be able to share that world with my daughters so they can share with other people. And, because we are part of the same world.
Yeah.
I had another beautiful incident, and it surprised me because where I live, there's a lot of cicadas. And, if you know cicadas, they make a lot of noise.
Oh, yes, they do.
And screeching, and that's happening. Well, one day I was, near the little pond area where we are, and the cicadas have been doing their thing. And I stepped back, and the two children with me, and my foot went on something hard, like a stone. But just as it was about to touch this hard thing, there's this big screech came out. And it was actually a warning from the cicada, or a fear screech from the cicada. I never knew an insect could have so much sentience and be able to communicate that way. So I just touched it and put my foot and looked there's a cicada. And I said to the children, look at that. The guy's shouting at me, telling me not to step on him. But there's just that energy that if we're connected, we can feed into it and we can, share it. So I picked the guy up and put him on the ground because it was getting to the stage where I think he wants to go underground to overwinter and that type of thing. And, if you're connected, anything like that can happen to you. But we're taught not to be connected. That's the problem.
Especially with all the technology, even though we think we're connected, we're diving into something else, which is not connected. When we're looking at social media instead of talking to someone. I mean, listen, this was the holidays for a lot of people. And one of the things, and I know Celeste was probably doing the same thing, looking at what the teenagers are doing, what the young people are doing. And while everybody's having a conversation, they're over there on their phones, they're doing this, click, and they're not connected, even though they think they're connected.
And
but
not present.
Not present, yeah. I mean, I'm sure you've been out to a restaurant before now, and there's people sat at a table, and there's only one person who's not on the phone, but they're all supposed to be together having this meal together. It's nonsense.
So we have to put the phones into a big bowl. So we, in general, with friends, I've noticed my tribe, we do actually have a no phone policy in a very natural way. And if you do, it's almost like get up. And we quickly remove ourselves from that beautiful vibrational presence of calmness.
Yeah, you got to be intentional, haven't you, to do that?
Yeah. What would your message be, Stuart? We're going into 2023. We've now brought up also the conversation of the awareness and the acceptance. So to accept your environment, you need to be consciously aware. What's your message for 2023? And what do you have to offer for your clients?
Well, the one word that I love to use is do. Many people
do it.
Just do. Many people dream, but they never actually get around to doing. And one of the reasons is because they don't really understand what their dreams are, or they're scared because they've got inbuilt fears from a long time ago, or they think that somebody might laugh at them. But if you learn to laugh at yourself, then no one can hurt you. That's the thing.
Humor
so I would suggest that people do. But the other thing is that people have a lot more hidden resources inside them than they give themselves credit for. I mean, I mentioned earlier about a young child learning to walk. That's a resource because it's the most difficult thing. It's a major milestone in their life. Writing, reading, speaking, all these things are major milestones in our lives. And we've done so many things if we choose to recognize that. For instance, if I say to most people, tell me 100 good things about you, write them down. People will get stuck after 10 or 15.
One.
But if I say, tell me 100 bad things, they never stop. Now, isn't that a shame that we can only remember bad things or so-called bad things?
Why?
Because
because you've mentioned that before, it's so much easier almost to be in a mindset of a little bit more the negative or even lazy, thinking it, not doing things, right? And we've been conditioned to maybe move slower, and not dare, not try, not adventure, especially career-wise. Then it should actually be easier to think more positively. Why it appears to me, doing so many interviews and doing my personal research, that we as society, it seems it's easier to think negative or to step away from the new danger or the new chapters than be positive. Why, Stuart?
I think it's a long sordid history of human development. I mean, if you go back to the Middle Ages in Europe, people used to go to public executions and take a picnic lunch with them, that type of thing. So they had this type of stuff ingrained. But also there's this mentality we've been given, and I don't know where it comes from, but it's wrong to boast. It's wrong to sing your own praises. And, rather keep quiet or rather complain about something. It's a shame, because we should celebrate our achievements. When my eldest daughter was 11 months and she started walking, she did about 2 steps and fell over and got up, and then she went, "Yay! Why don't we do it now? Why don't we do it now? Why don't we celebrate that little achievement or that big achievement?" Because it gives us an energy. Yeah. But I didn't have to tell her. She just did it because she knew. And unfortunately, society, as she gets older and gets to schooling, homework will come back. She may be proud of it, but it's crossed out because there's a mistake. There's a red line through it. Or you get told, don't do this. Or, people amplify the negative side of things. I mean, for instance, very often children cry. They bump themselves and they cry. And parents say, "Okay, what's wrong with you?" But they don't realize that the message that's being embedded is there's something wrong.
So it's the key
What's making you cry? Yeah. But we don't realize it. We're doing it out of the goodness of our heart. But we're not taught, and this is another problem, we're not taught the connection and the energy of language, because words are just labels. And we all associate an energy with whatever word is chosen. For instance, I was on a training call once, and I was talking with a lady in a Zoom room about benign attention, just letting things be. And she couldn't connect to it. She had this negativity, this pain, this type of reaction to the word benign. And I was wondering, what's going on? So we had a conversation, and it turns out that she worked in a terminal cancer care facility, and she was seeing a lot of pain and suffering all day long. And that was connected to the word benign, because cancer and tumors and benign were all part and parcel of the same lexicon. So I got out the thesaurus and gave her a few synonyms, and all of a sudden, ding, there's no negative energy. She could understand it, but we're not taught this. We just assume to be able to communicate. And we don't listen to people. That's the other thing. We listen to make an answer. We don't listen to understand. And we don't even think about where the other individual is in their world when we're talking to them. And we don't try and enter it. We just try and drag them into our world. And that's not good.
One of the things that you definitely are doing for your children is you're teaching them something that most parents don't do, to show them a different way of thinking. A lot of times we let the words sink in, and sometimes those words are going to hurt. And we don't explain to our children or even to a young adult what the words really mean. Like you did, you took the thesaurus and you said, "Wait, let's figure out." Right? That was great. And because some of these children are not being raised by their parents, a lot of times maybe they're in daycare for many hours, and the people in daycare, they may be doing a good job, but they're not taking that moment, that time to really impact that child. as a very in-depth parent who understands language, who understands that the words make a difference in our children, you're impacting your children the way that most people are not. So kudos to you. But how can we make a difference in the lives of those children who are not in front of a parent like yourself?
Well, I think we've got to spread more of the word and the understanding and start teaching people about the nuances of language. And I think somehow we have to get the education system changed, that it teaches us communication at a young age. Because it's not teaching us communication. We're expected to be able to communicate. We're assumed to be able to communicate. But, if you go through relationships or in businesses or whatever, one of the biggest problems is communication.
Right.
People, number one, they listen to answer. And number two, they expect everybody else to understand what they're saying. But if you have a message to give somebody, it's your responsibility to give that message in a way that the other person can understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I was taught that when I first started teaching English. There was one boy in my class, he was about 7 or 9 or something like that. And whatever I was teaching, he couldn't get on board. He just couldn't get on with. And I was trying to push it down more forcibly. And eventually I gave up, and in disgust with myself, I said, he's stupid. And this is to myself. I didn't say it out loud. I said to myself, he's stupid. He's never going to get it. And I left it. And then after the class, I took my usual 10 minutes to evaluate what I was doing and what worked and what didn't work. And I said, Stuart, you're stupid. Because he's already showed you he can't understand the way you're trying to deliver the message. And all you're trying to do is push it harder and harder. So next class, I went away. I came into the class with a totally different approach to the same thing, and ding, all the light bulbs went off. He was the happiest person in the world. Because he taught me. I need to listen to him. I need to listen to where they are. I had another student who did a similar thing. He's like this. He's trying to watch the whiteboard and not trying to get him to stay still and everything else. And he kept asking questions. And what's wrong with this person? And I had to walk around the class, and I found out where he was sitting. There was just reflection on the whiteboard. He couldn't see a single thing on the whiteboard. And I was blaming him.
Right.
But we don't do that because we're too involved in ourselves. We're not listening to all these messages. We're not hearing these messages. And we think it's their job to hear us. And it's not. It's our job to make sure that we can deliver the message in a way that they can understand. And ask them questions so we can find out what it is that they need, how they need it.
Yeah, I love that idea. And one of the things as a teacher myself, one of the things I'm always asking is, do you understand it? And I get this, and I'm like, no.
Yes.
Do you
That's
understand? And I still get this, and I'm like, no. Do me a favor. Explain it back to me.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like, wait a minute. So the important aspect of, I think, to teach, and as a teacher yourself, you understand that there's different learning modalities that everyone has. And you're right. It's not that the kid was stupid, is that he didn't understand your concept, your idea. But the minute you said there's got to be a different way, and to me that's a challenge. I love challenges. And my goal is, when I'm instructing someone, is for them to take it away and understand it better than I do. So for me, people like, well, I heard it already. I said, yeah, but did you hear it from this angle? Did you hear it? Did you understand it from this aspect? What is your thought? And then all of a sudden I'll ask, 10, 12, 14, 15 kids, I'll say, okay, I want every one of you to tell me what you think I just said. And some people will say, oh, same. I'm like, no. You can say the same thing he said, but I want to hear it from your mouth.
Your voice.
The word same doesn't help you. I want your expression. And then once we get past the same stuff, everybody starts putting their own interpretation to it. So now everybody understands the message. So for me, clarity is so important. Like that movie, right? Can you handle the truth? Right? Was that A Few Good
No, I
Men,
mean,
right?
it becomes an exploration rather than a teaching, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key. And unfortunately, a lot of the school systems have become remembering to pass an exam. It's not about absorbing knowledge. It's not about understanding and applying knowledge. It's just to pass an exam because it's much more convenient. It's easier to measure. It doesn't take up so much time. I had a student who wanted to go to Oxford University in the UK. And I said to him, what's involved in the exam? He says, no idea. So I said, okay, well, let's find out. And we went to the Oxford University website, and there's a lot of videos, or there were a lot of videos on there at the time, about how the interview process was. But number one, he hadn't even thought about looking, because it was all about, you study hard, you get a good result. But number two, when he found out what was involved, and it was, you meet your professor, and as you said, Rafa, you have that discussion. They ask you a question, they couldn't give a damn about the answer. They're not interested about the answer. They want to know how you get to that answer. We're going to talk about it, explain it, and work through it, and I'll help you, I'll give you pointers, but let's see that you can think. But that's missing in many, many education systems around the world today because it takes too much time. It's much more challenging to measure. But that's what's needed. That's really what education is about. And it doesn't help to just have a multiple choice question, because we get the old Zeigarnik effect coming into effect. We study, we remember, once we finish the business, it's gone. We don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
With hypnosis and the meditation part of it, I've done a lot of research in where you can even fall asleep to audios reminding you of vibrational worlds and self-love and allowing you to grow and allowing you to observe more and listen to other people. What's your opinion on those audios, Stuart? Because they're quite popular. Is that something that you suggest? Is that something you do with your clients?
I think they have their benefits. I mean, it depends on what you want to achieve with hypnosis. For instance, hypnosis is basically a way of talking about trance, and trance is something we're in all the time. You drive a car, you're in a trance. It helps you to function. You go to the supermarket, 99% of the time you're in a trance, and the supermarkets know this. This is why they keep shuffling all the shelves and the aisles and moving things around, so you have to wake up. We call the pattern interrupts. And all we're doing is using it as a way, shall we say, to conserve energy. Now, unfortunately, for many people, they're living in what I would call a negative trance, or a mental prison. So they're in this trance of unworthiness. I'm not good enough. I can't do this, I can't do that. And we need to snap them out of that and then allow them to go into a trance of worthiness, potential. Remember what they've achieved rather than what they haven't achieved, etc., etc. So there are many ways we can do that. And sometimes, especially with deeply programmed things that have happened in people's lives, the unconscious mind is there to protect us. That's one of its main things. So it will lock that away. And traditional psychology, etc., sometimes decides it needs to regurgitate everything. But we can also work with that and get rid of the after effects of the problem if we allow the unconscious to give us a symbol. So we can work in a symbolic way. For instance, you could have a problem and I say to you, what color is it? Or is there a feeling associated or something like that? And you come along and you say green or whatever. So we're talking about green. The unconscious mind knows we're talking about the real problem, but neither of us need to regurgitate whatever it is, and it can deal with it and fix it in a beautiful way. So it can be very empowering in that respect. And Raphael, you do a lot of training, obviously, so you've been in a trance many times, and you probably had helped people go into that trance of potential and seen their performance just explode, where they thought beforehand they couldn't do it. So it's a natural phenomenon, and all we're doing with hypnosis is finding a way to use it in a beneficial way rather than a negative way.
Right. Yeah. And Stuart, a lot of times when people think they can't do it, frustration sets in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people are not taught that it's okay to fail. One of the things that I always tell my clients and anyone who's even willing to listen is that your mistakes don't define you. Your mistakes make you better. So a lot of times people, because they're frustrated, I had this with my young son, who's 18 now, but when he was younger, he thought he couldn't draw because my other son, who's 3 years older than him, is extremely gifted. Celeste, you saw some of the drawings I did over the weekend, right?
Yes.
So I like to draw, so I would have both my kids drawing, and my younger one used to get frustrated because he thought he couldn't draw. And so he'd get into a temper tantrum sometimes. And he'd get all mad. And then I would you did a drawing. Yeah, but it's not as good as Marco's. And I'm like, but Marco's got his own drawing. This is your drawing. Let's enjoy it. What were you trying to draw? Okay. How can I help you? So it's getting out of the frustration and understanding that we all have different abilities. We may not be as gifted in this aspect, but we have other abilities that may be even better. So a lot of times I used to take sidewalk chalk and make them go outside and go, let's go draw on the sidewalk. And if you don't like it, you can wash it off. Same thing. Why do you think there's an eraser at the end of your pencil? To erase any mistakes? So no big deal. And eventually he got into drawing, and he's actually a pretty good artist. But if we allowed his frustration to take over, he would never have explored that. And a lot of people, it's the frustration that takes over, right?
Yeah, and he's not seeing the drawing through his drawing. He's seeing it through the other drawing. And he's making that comparison. Yeah, and that's a challenge. And you said something very important, which always reminds me of Kung Fu Panda. We've all got our own abilities. I don't know whether it was number 4 or whatever, but Wu Gui had gone off to do his thing, and the panda's got to bring all the villages together to defend against an invading army. And he was struggling because he's trying to make them all the same. And eventually he had this brainwave, and he saw that they're all individuals. And they've all got their own talents. Let's use those talents and grow those talents in their own way, which is unique to the individual. And that's the key. Grow the individual and teach them that to see things through their own eyes and see their own beauty, because that is something that most people don't. They're always being compared to this person or that person or something like that. You're not good enough. You're never going to do this or whatever. But, excuse me. I mean, look at Picasso.
You see.
His drawings. I mean, when they first came out, people thought he was crazy. I mean, there was a time before that it was all about beautiful countryside, constables and stuff like this. And then he came out with these weird things, or Dali and things like that. But they have their own speciality, their own uniqueness. Let's recognize that about people and grow it, and just recognize people as people. So, it's a very important lesson you gave, your son there. And it's something I think that we need to encourage. I mean, for instance, my daughter, she likes drawing. She's my eldest daughter. My youngest daughter is still not there yet. And whether she ever will be is another question. It's not important whether she is or not. But She, the youngest one, banged the arm of my youngster when she was drawing a cake, and so the colouring she was doing of the eye thing stuck outside. And it's like a big line, a green line like this sticking out the outside of a tiered cake, and she's angry, she's upset, she's everything else and everything. So I said, "Oh, it's interesting. I wonder, we can make a strawberry out of that, can't we?" No, that's why I just casually drew a very rough strawberry and walked off. Came back a few minutes later. There's two beautiful strawberries, and the green line was the leaves on top and everything else there. Because she's now seen possibility.
Yeah.
And, my youngest daughter, she started kindergarten this year, and they had a basketball competition, so we got her a basketball. And within half an hour of getting it, she's up to 100 bounces consecutively, very, very quickly. And a couple of nights later, she was walking around, no shoes on, and she's bouncing the ball. So I said, "Okay, just put your shoes on." And I'm expecting to put the ball down and stop. No. She bounced the ball, she bent down, got one shoe, put it on, carried on bouncing, did it with the other foot. And then I said, "Okay, your nose, go get a tissue, blow your nose." So she walks over, gets the tissues, the box fell on the floor. She picked the box up, got a tissue, blew her nose, carried on bouncing. She didn't break her bounce once.
Wow.
She had that ability. Now, that's a beautiful learning point, that she doesn't understand the resource that she's got, but I've got. And I can reflect it back to her later on. So we just by being observant, by being present as you were, and unfortunately so many people aren't, we can give the gifts back to the children, and let them remember them and recall those gifts. And it's all about potential, what we can do. And on that, what we can do, there's a very important language point I would like to point out that many people don't realize is they say, "How can I help you?"
How?
But it's not about how. How can I help you? The emphasis is on, can I help you? So if we swap it around and say, "I'm curious, I wonder how I can help you." Now the focus is on the how rather than can I, because the "I can" is a definite certainty. We can help. But we're not taught how the unconscious mind is taking on this little nuances of language. And how many times do you say to a child, "Don't do that"? And the child goes and does it.
Oh, yeah.
Because in the child's mind, the message is, do that. If the unconscious doesn't tend to pick up on the don't part, it does it. So we've got to think about how we're actually communicating and what level we're communicating with other people. But we're not taught it because we're not taught communication. We're not taught the fundamentals of language, really. And that's a shame.
Yeah. With some people, you actually have to tell them, "Go do that." They'll go, "Wait a minute, you want me to really do that?"
Just do it. Trust me.
Yeah. But
With
it's true.
your Discover Your Dreams, you were mentioning to us that this is something you're offering in 2023. What age group can people approach you for you to teach them, as an example, how to speak, how to share vibrational positive words, making other people aware of it, yet alone ourselves?
My preferred age group is around 35 upwards, but I have and I do work with younger people. I would suggest it's more important that the people are more open. They're not locked into this fear and doubt and I can't and all this. They're open. Okay, things are not working for me now. Let me see how I can get some help with it. Rather than a lot of people, like, for instance, I know you probably also know people who are very negative. No, there's no way. No. Those people are never going to change until something happens in their life to kick them out of that thinking, because they're locked into that prison. They're not seeing the key. I mean, there was that old flies in the jar experiment done, where they had the flies in the jar with the lid on, and then they took the lid off and it didn't come out because they're still locked in and trapped in that thinking. And that is more important. People have got to be open. But there's something missing, but I don't know what. Let me find someone who can help me look for what's missing or connect to what's missing.
That
And so,
clarity.
yeah, and sometimes, the glasses are here, but we can't see them.
Where are my glasses? You see them? You see them?
Yep.
So we're heading into a possibility of people making changes where people say, for New Year's, I'm going to make a change. I know Celeste has some great slide, and we're going to talk right now about what changes we can make for 2023, even if it's for 2030, 2050, whatever new year comes up. Every year, we always make a promise that we're going to change our habits, we're going to change our thinking, we're going to change our lives. But so many people and a lot of fitness facilities, including mine, will have people come through, last a month or 2 months, and then they stop. So, Celeste, would you bring that slide up on bucket list? I love that one.
Sure.
So, what are we going to do differently this coming year? What are we going to do tomorrow? And why is it that we always... Oh, Celeste, I love the way that you emphasize my F in my name.
I just
That's
realized
because
that's
fabulous, right? I'm fabulous.
double the energy, double the energy.
So what is it that we can do to facilitate, there's the F word, facilitate an impact that we can sustain?
Sustain it.
Right? What is it that we need to do? What's on your bucket list, Stuart?
My bucket list is to grow the business to, and I'm still working on wording, but to make it into an oasis of hope and possibility in the desert of doubt and confusion that people can come to. And I want to help as many people as I can. But I also am very deeply connected to nature and to especially African nature. Africa is a very special place for me. So I've been talking to a couple of people. For instance, I was speaking to somebody the other day from Nigeria who's in the mental health field and specifically aimed at gentlemen who, it seems like wherever we go in the world, the mindset is a man doesn't have a problem. And if they do, they just keep quiet about it because I think it's that warrior mentality and whatever. But he's working with people in Nigeria, but he's also got a vision that he wants to start a radio station about mental health because there are a lot of people in the poor areas of the country who don't have cell phone signals. They don't have cell phone towers. He wants to get that radio station to get the message out to people there and find ways of helping them because they can't come into Lagos in the city, the capital city, partly because of time and, it may be 8, 10 or more hours travel, but then they've got to say why they're going and there's a stigma attached to it and everything else. So to connect with people like that and see how I can help them get their dreams realized. And also give back to nature. But we can't give back to nature, especially conservation work, unless we involve the communities because they're the people who are connected. For instance, I know a young woman in Kenya, and she's telling me she can't go to the game reserves there because they're too expensive. They're only for rich tourists. And to me, that's terrible. That whole part of their whole upbringing, their country, their heritage is shut out from them. It's totally, totally wrong. So I want to find ways to make this more real, make it more tangible, at the same time as helping other people. And one of the words that came up to me was retreats. Maybe I can find a way to make a retreat happen or something along those lines. And the ideas are there. They're just forming at this moment. And that's why I like that clock. So somehow it's going to happen, but it's beautiful. It's very exciting.
Garden of Eden a lot, which I really sort of liked. I find that this was actually from the 1600s, and I thought that was an absolutely beautiful way of it to represent the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, I mean, what is a Garden of Eden to you as an individual?
Yeah.
Because
Even
it's a
if you
very
live in the
special
concrete
place.
jungle, right?
Yeah, you can, have this picture of something which is special, and that's your Garden of Eden. And that's the key. It's not my Garden of Eden. It's not somebody else's. It's the individual. What is it which is so special to them? And if they can connect to that, and this is actually where, hypnosis can help as well, because we can future pace. We can get people to live a day or 2 or 3 as their new selves. What time do you get up in the morning? What shoes are you going to wear? What dress? What color? This. We can get them to actually experience it in a hypnotic state. So it's become a real experience, and they're living that Garden of Eden, and now they've got the memory powering them through. We need those things to make the dreams more real.
We do.
And, we both know, we all know that the film, The Bucket List, with Morgan Freeman, and they're ticking off the things that they did. We need a way of measuring and celebrating the things that we've achieved in that journey towards the new healthy body. How many people, I mean, you get older people who come into your gym. How many people actually celebrate the new health they've got and the new way they're feeling?
They don't.
It doesn't come. There's nothing to keep it going.
Yeah, most people don't know how to celebrate anyway.
Yeah.
Because they think that in order to celebrate, they have to eat a lot. And that's not always the best way. Let me tell you about my little bucket list. On my bucket list is to meet with Celeste and give her a hug. Right? Yes. Yes, we got to hug it out, girl. So one of the things that is very inspirational to me is always getting to make new friends like we have today, Stuart. I am so happy that you and I got connected by Sarah. And first we were trying to figure out, because so many people are introducing us, right? We are like, who introduced you? Oh, wait a minute. What? And then you introduced me to someone, and it's always these connections that we can make.
It is.
And I think this is why I love what we're doing. Celeste and I met like almost 2 years ago, wasn't it, Celeste? But we still haven't seen each other in person. So it's that community that we eventually want to have together. And one day I'm looking to plan in May or June to have anybody who's ever been on any one of my shows to come to New York, and let's get together. So Celeste, I'm telling you now, she's got her microphone. She's going to be the hostess with the mostest.
The microphone comes out for the big announcements.
There you go. Big announcements. So thank you so much for being here with us. Celeste, before we take off, and I know we're going a little bit over, which is fine. What is... And when I asked you earlier, what's on your bucket list, and you laughed and you said, I've already done so much, but you still have so much more to do.
Absolutely.
What's one thing that you would love to do?
Oh, listen, I through actually a DNA test, I found out that half of my DNA is up from either Iceland or Norway. And I've never been there. So I've traveled to over 70 cities on this planet, but I've never been up to the Vikings. That's my half inheritance. So that journey is starting next year. And my personal message a little bit with New Year's Eve coming up, besides obviously be healthy, have that positive mindset, choose your vibrational environment as well, because it's going to echo back and forth, right? Is explore more about your tribe. Where do you really come from? Is it genetics, your whole family, your culture, your attitudes? Because as we spoke before, it does also come from your childhood and where you grew up and how. So I think for next year, my inspiration would be find out more about yourself, your tree, who you are, go and travel there, meet more people from that same kind of vibration and energy. and travel the world. It's an amazing place.
It is an amazing place. And we need to listen, if you can't travel there, at least pick up a book and start reading and start getting into it. One of the things that I love that you're doing is you said, I'm going in November, but I'm putting money towards it. So
Oh, yeah.
it's not going to become a burden for you because you're slowly facilitating this adventure you're going to go on.
I
And
need the
that's
warm
what,
clothes. That's what I'm
yeah,
saving up for. I live in Australia, so I need to save up for the winter jackets and the complete different outfit, right?
yeah, right.
But
But
by
here's the
doing that,
thing, right?
you're taking the steps. You're taking the
hmm
steps. You're already on that journey. That's the key.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's reality already. So imagining through meditation, through hypnosis, I already am there, or I deserve that. It is
You
part
do.
of myself. And these are all the vibrational messages and words we have to continually say. Often when we teach about goals, it seems like we speak in the future. But if we actually say we are already have it, or we own it, or we are this way, then sort of the
Yeah.
beginning of it.
Love it. Love it. So I love the fact of vibrating yourself into a new future, but that new future, you might have to vibrate some people out of it, right? Because some
Shake
people,
the spaghetti
Yeah.
colander. That's what my dad used to say to me when I was young. Take the spaghetti colander and shake it out a little once a year.
Yeah.
twice
And
a year, I like
sometimes
that.
we can't get rid of everybody. We just have to find a way to stop
Separate.
their negative influence, because sometimes it's our family and we like the family, but we don't want to alienate them, but we can't let them hold us back. And
Absolutely.
sometimes our success threatens our family with change.
Mm.
And they try and hold us back unconsciously, because what are we going to do if this person's successful? So we've got to be a little bit wise about how we mitigate that potential damage that can happen.
Yeah.
You know,
You,
that's a big thing that holds people back.
that's beautifully said. And when you think about a drowning person, they're very dangerous, especially to the person trying to save them, right?
Yep.
Because, and one of the things when I was a junior lifeguard, one of the lessons that we were taught is that if you're trying to save somebody, they're going to try to drown you. And not on purpose, is because they're trying to pull themselves up and they're going to use you as that lever. So well, it must be
That's
time
the
to
love
dance at my side.
version.
Okay, so I have another thing I have to do. So here's the thing. I know we have to go. We were taught that if you're trying to save somebody and they're a little bit out of control, you have to knock them out to save them.
Yep.
So sometimes you have to knock out your family, right? In a good
Yep.
way. In a good way.
In a
So,
nice way,
yes,
yeah. I mean, because they will hold you back.
they will hold you back. But you can
For
still save them a little.
You
Yeah.
know, I really would like to know, Stuart, because we were talking about, I mean, this is the last show for 2022, and it was the perfect conversation. And thank you so much for being the guest speaker, because it's that perfect topic of reminding ourselves to be in the presence with good intentions and our good vibration. And you've done so many things. What's on your bucket list? Because you've already traveled the world a lot as well.
Well, I mean, one of the big things I want to do is get back to Africa and get my children to be able to visit Africa, but not tourist Africa,
That's a
the
good
real Africa.
The
And,
real-
you know, they're a little bit young at the moment to have lions sniffing around the tent at night time with them inside. But, you know, that's something very special. But I want to find a way to let them experience the energy in a non-threatening way to them, and meet some of the other children, because if the children, you know, they have these conversations that we can't even imagine, and they can learn so much from each other. So one way would be to introduce it is through, you know, creating groups online where we can make, you know, have art projects, have craft projects. Okay, let's make something, and see how they make it, see how we make it, see how he makes it or she makes it, and see what materials and what ideas and concepts, and then we can have a discussion and we can start living together. And, you know, the world is not such a big place anymore.
No. Making it smaller and smaller.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Our last show, we're coming back January 3rd, season 2 of the Seer Show. We wish everybody, listen, have an amazing, amazing end of this year. But listen, the year's not over. Live every day. Live every day, because we don't know when we're going to be on the other side.
Yeah, that's right. Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy.
And make it successful.
Super successful. Enjoy, everybody. God bless.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, both of you.